Namaste and welcome to Urban Chatterati. This is Abhinav Prakash, and today I'm going to discuss the latest development between India, America, Japan, and Australia regarding the security cooperation now known as Quad. So, Abhijit, thank you for being on the show again and discussing this, I'll say, very important turn in the geopolitics of the region.
Vetrivel, thanks for having me.
So, Abhijit, what is the agenda for this meeting which is going to be held tomorrow, and what can we expect from it?
So, I think it's better to look back at history in this particular case because the agenda for the upcoming meeting is something of a joke. Let me actually read out as per a report in Foreign Policy. This is what the White House the White House spokesperson said would be on the agenda, and I'm quoting. Biden's press secretary Jen Psaki told reporters would focus on issues including the threat of COVID, economic cooperation, and the climate crisis. So basically, they're all meeting to eat cigarettes and kulfi. Smoke cigarettes and eat kulfi and chew on some pan.
It's not a physical meeting, it's a virtual meeting.
Uh, yeah, so they'll virtually be eating kulfi and pan or sushi or whatever. But outside of that, we're not going to get anything much. But this is a sign of times to come, because this is what you remember we discussed this. Under Obama, he started off something called an Asian pivot.
Hmm.
The Asian pivot, even though it was, trumped up as this brave new policy to contain China and things like that, US forces actually moved 800 kilometers back. Okay. They went from the first island chain to the second island chain pretty much in terms of their presence. So there was a big difference between what was being said and what was being done. And because the press only focuses on what is being said and they don't have the money to research what is being done, this was hailed as a great big triumph in all of that. Now, what you're seeing is something even worse. The Quad was always meant to be a Indo-Pacific security organization, not targeted at anyone. And that is jargon for saying, it is targeted at someone. It's the exact opposite. Um, and things like climate change, economic cooperation, and things like that were, not really part of it. I remember at the Raisina dialogue some 2 years back, the only person talking about a blue economy was the Australian admiral out there. The other three admirals were only talking military stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
So what
I think I was part of that crisis.
I think you were part of that Raisina also, right? And
I
we were
remember.
just sitting there looking at it, going completely gobsmacked, thinking, what exactly is the Australian admiral on? But it turns out he was onto something,
Hmm.
because what's been happening is you see that its value is now being diluted down to a talk shop and nothing more. And this is always what we were worried about, given how compromised Biden is to China, specifically his son. We don't know if this Biden or it's Putramo, his love of his compromised son or whatever. Which incidentally, we've heard nothing of the investigation that the FBI started since then. But whatever it is, we're seeing this is going to be a sequence of events. You're going to see more and more talk about how this is, a brave new initiative to control China or whatever. In fact, the climate change bit should be particularly worrying for India, because climate change is jargon to crack down on India.
Yes.
Right? Because remember, what happened was that even under Obama, Obama initially floated the idea of a G2, where instead of the USA and the USSR, it would now be the USA and China. They would share this duopoly over the world. And when that didn't really take off, what they did was, because we were hiding behind China, we thought, like we've never learned our lessons over the last 40, 50 years. So we thought China is a reliable partner. We were hiding behind them. China goes and negotiates its own climate change deal with America, leaves us high and dry. And then the Americans tell us that that deal is no longer on the table for you. That was for China. If you want to negotiate now, your negotiating cards are much less.
Hmm.
Right? So understand what is happening here. The subtext is they are going to use the Quad to pile on pressure on India. And that for me is particularly interesting. I don't even know why we agreed to this agenda uh, uh, on a consultative basis. It should have never been brought in. Climate change is one thing. Look, I do believe, I'm not a climate change denier. I do believe
Yeah.
in climate change. I believe we're in deep shit over climate change. India is going to get affected a lot worse than Japan or Australia or America. And we haven't woken up to it. But that's a very different issue given our current foreign policy and given our current economy, from agreeing to it to be on the Quad agenda.
Hmm. Hmm. So
Mm.
you're basically saying that we're not going to discuss the military issues that much, or maybe it's just a way to, let's say, to avoid provoking China, that we're going to discuss military issues. So we will be issuing
Why are
discussing
you
things
so
on this.
scared of China? Just last year, they've killed 20 of our troops, and we're still so scared of China.
But we are, because remember, the Quad was born in 2007, if I'm not wrong,
Yeah,
and within 1 year it was dead because
it
Manmohan
was
Singh said
dead.
that
It was dead because of
we are not
Australia.
part of any grouping
It
against China.
it was dead. No. Manmohan Singh gave the correct answer. He said, "We are not part of any grouping to contain anyone,"
Hmm.
which is understand in diplomatic jargon, like we discussed, that is a threat.
Hmm.
It's like holding a neck to your throat and saying, "I'm not here to kill you, I'm your friend."
Hmm.
And you all know when holding a neck to the throat, holding a knife to the throat, what it means, right? So Manmohan said the right thing. The issue was Kevin Rudd, who himself was compromised to the Chinese severely. He has a Chinese son-in-law, incidentally. Yeah, you didn't know that, did you? Chinese son-in-law. So Kevin Rudd did a lot of things. He won the election. He cancels the India-Australia nuclear deal. You remember that John Howard had agreed to the deal and agreed to the supply of Australian uranium. Kevin Rudd comes, he cancels it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Long
he
back.
goes to Beijing
Hmm.
and, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Chinese, announces Australia will no longer be part of the Quad. Hmm. That was the level of his compromise. I think, Biden is he isn't going to be as clumsy as Kevin Rudd. But let's be very clear, over the next 4 years, the pressure is going to pile on India. And the only pressure on China will be verbal pressure. There will be no action. In fact, all the actions will go against us,
Yes, you will
or
be
our
seeing
interest in
that.
containing China. The good thing, of course, is given the Japanese are a lot more paranoid than we are,
Hmm.
they will do something. Now, the problem, remember, is that Obama also let Japan down. If you remember, in the dispute over the Senkaku Diaoyu Islands, when China declared that air defense identification zone and things like that, they said, the Americans said, we're not, uh,
Interfering.
we don't accept that ADIZ. But there was a very, very curious formulation. Completely suo moto, they add, our alliance with Japan is when Japan is attacked.
Hmm.
Implying, of course, that disputed territories do not come under Japan. So if Diaoyu or Senkaku are attacked, the Mutual Defense Pact does not apply.
Imagine.
So understand, this is where people get things so wrong. The only people that were happy with Obama were the Europeans. And the problem is the Western press, which is what we see ourselves through, is so Eurocentric. It is only European concerns that matter.
European
And
concerns
Obama
are the
be
world concerns.
Of course. And Obama being so completely in tune with a Eurocentric worldview, seeking the approval of the white man,
Hmm.
and in return kind of blackwashing them, so to say. you
Hmm.
know uh, you label me the next great intellectual, and I will, by association, I will rid you of the white man's guilt. So what he used to do was that he was completely focused on Russia and European concerns and things like that. He threw the rest of the alliance under the truck. He threw Israel under the truck. He threw Japan under the truck. As you can see with the Quad, there was a withdrawal, not a going forward. Biden is going to bring all of those things back. All the Asian,
Yes.
Middle Eastern allies are going to be treated like crap, because remember, the only thing that sells in America is a Eurocentric point of view. That is what counts as policy expertise.
But we are already seeing that. So how can we trust America in the Quad? Because when if you can throw or you can punish Saudi Arabia or Dubai, or UAE, which are your have been your most, let's say, trustworthy allies. If you can just punish them on a whim, then how can India trust the America or the Biden administration going forward
I
against China?
agree. And, this is where it turns out I was wrong and the non alignment lobby was absolutely right. America is untrustworthy. We still have friends, say, in the Pentagon. Had Trump's policies continued, it would have been reliable. But this kind of policy variation, we are always told America is an institutional democracy, that people may come and people may go, but policies go on forever. Yet, what we're
Hmm.
seeing is between Obama, Trump, and Biden, there is such a huge swing in policies. There is just clear
Yes.
punishment, or carrots given to Iran, punishment given to old allies, that this notion of an institutional democracy doesn't even apply to America anymore,
Yeah.
and that is worrying.
But tell me one thing, is it because of the social changes occurring in America because they are shifting far towards their society is shifting towards the left and this entire wokeism? So that is that being reflected now in their foreign policy, their understanding of the world, because you are going after every country which is democratic or which is moving towards democracy or better rule of law. Take, for example,
Mm.
Saudi Arabia. It's moving towards modernity, it's moving towards secularism. But now you are punishing Saudi Arabia as an evil guy, and you are funding all kind of crazy religious people around the
And
world.
you're punishing the UAE after it declared cohabitation legal. Imagine a
Hmm.
Muslim country declaring it's fine for unmarried couples to live together,
Hmm.
right? So you're
Hmm.
punishing a lot of your friends. Uh, Part of this is wokeism, yes. All right. Part of this is a personal peak, that how the Saudis, the Emiratis, and the Israelis kind of ganged up against the Democrats and were completely in camp Trump. So it's punishing them for that. The third aspect of it is that because this is the deal with Iran is a Democrat legacy, right? So there's the continuation of that sort of Democrat ideal. The fourth is more to do with how compromised America and America's institutions are to China.
Hmm.
Tell me one newspaper that doesn't depend on Chinese advertisement. Tell me
Hmm.
one American newspaper or media outlet that doesn't depend on business houses that don't depend on China,
Interesting.
right? This is and I used to remember when all this news, when Silvio Berlusconi was having his sex parties, the so-called bunga bunga parties, the Italian prime minister. There was a lot of talk about how Russian money is corrupting, how corruption is a big issue in Europe. And of course, corruption was code word for Russia and having business deals with Russia. Note how nobody talks about corruption or having business deals with China as somehow being a corrupting influence, but only having business deals with Russia is a corrupting influence,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? All of this, so it's going into a much much bigger uh, matrix of a lot of worrying things happening. Like you said, wokeism, but personalization of policy, personal irritation, legacy being compromised to China. All of them. See, like we always say, a big victory is always a sum total of small events. And just like that, a big change is always the sum total of small changes. And that is what you're seeing here. There's too many small changes happening, which in their entirety end up becoming a very big shift.
Yes. So basically, the Quad came up in 2007. It was dead on arrival. Then it was revived in 2017. What happened between and after 2017? This is the first meeting which is going to happen. What happened in those 4 years? Then we are again, at least for the namesake, trying to revive this platform.
Right. So it became a kind of a bilateral platform, really, between India and America. Japan always was in. It was only Australians who left. And then the Australians wanted back in after that rotten Labour government was voted out, and the Liberals in Australia, it's the Labour and Liberal, but the Liberals are the Conservatives. I know it's very confusing, but anyway. So let's just call them the Conservatives, just to be clear. When the Conservatives come back in, Australia wants back in the Quad. The problem is India. India keeps saying no. After that stunt you pulled off in Beijing in under Kevin Rudd, you're not coming back here.
I think
So
which is a nice position to take.
it's a very good position to take. I think the issue was that it was taken too far. Instead of just punishing them, what we should have said was, look, you're being punished because you didn't institutionalize the change. You need to have some kind of legal or treaty obligations now in order to institutionalize this, so that no dickhead of a prime minister like Kevin Rudd can come again and reverse course. We didn't do that. So effectively, we've let Australia back in without any kind of institutional protection, without any kind of treaty protection. Part of it is our fault because we don't believe in treaties, non-alignment and all that crap. So it's become problematic now. That Australia is probably much more stable now. I think Kevin Rudd burnt his fingers because the Chinese put him in their place. The Chinese tend to put everybody in their place. If you think you're too big for your own good, they'll put you in your place. And if you're an obsequious little dog like Kevin Rudd or Pakistan are, they'll still put you in your place because, they eat dogs. So it's just one of those things.
Yeah. So we are only talking about Australia, India, and Japan in the Pacific region. What about the other countries like South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines? How do they see the Quad?
Right. Now, the only person that's very, very clear about the Quad is Vietnam. Because remember, Vietnam is one of those countries that has always been clear about its security for the last 1,000 years. And I think in that sense, whatever strategic vision that existed in India prior to those 1,000 years somehow migrated to Vietnam. Because what you see in Vietnam is, look at its succession of defeating invaders. They screw the Chinese over, then they screw the Mongols over. Well, the Mongols succeeded, but at an extremely high cost. And then they managed to kick the Mongols out. Then they managed to kick the Chinese out again, screw the Chinese over very badly. Then they screw the French over very badly. Then they screw the Americans over very badly. Then the Chinese try again and they screw them over very badly. If there is a graveyard of empires, it is not Afghanistan, it is in fact Vietnam.
I agree. I was about to say that.
And I think about 2 Raicenas before you attended, Abhinav, I think that was the last Raisina that I was involved in organizing. I remember the Vietnamese general who came there. He very proudly thumped his chest and he said, you don't need size to deal with China. What you need is a big heart.
Agreed.
That's the Vietnamese spirit.
Agreed.
Right. That is why
respect, I think any lesser society would have broken by what Vietnam went through in the last 100 years.
Yeah.
I mean, sustaining invasions after invasions and still thriving, coming out as a successful economic story. It tells you the society is very strong, unlike Indian society, which has been defeated again and again the last 1,000 years.
Exactly right. They've been an extremely strong society.
So Vishwaguru is Vietnam, not India, you are saying.
Yeah, Vietnam, the country we wish we were, but we're not. So Vietnam, but the other countries, other than so, there's a belt of clarity here: Japan, Singapore, Vietnam, Taiwan. We don't talk to Taiwan.
Yeah.
Okay, even unofficially, we don't talk to Taiwan.
But
Okay,
they have a mission in India.
that doesn't matter. They're so scared, and the problem with the Taiwanese is that they think our MEA is completely compromised. They're not incorrect, by the way, right? They're almost 90% accurate out there, because when they go through the kind of examples of things on the way the MEAs try to sabotage non-official contacts, it's really scary. It's really, really scary. So you have the Taiwanese who are paranoid about our MEA, but even otherwise, we are too scared to do anything, and we're too untrustworthy to do anything for the Taiwanese, because they're like, look, you're compromised from within. There's very little we can actually do with you. There's the Vietnamese who we're happy to talk to. The South Koreans are a bit iffy, and that's mostly because of North Korea. They're bogged down with that issue, so they can't really look at a larger picture. So it's mostly left to Japan, Vietnam, and Singapore to do things. And Singapore has always been very clear. They don't care that they're a majority Chinese country. And isn't it surprising that the two clearest people on China, the Taiwanese and the Singaporeans, are either entirely Chinese or majority Chinese? And they're such amazing societies because this is what China could have been had
Yeah.
it been a democracy.
Yes.
And
And
sadly, it will never be.
tell me one thing. What
Right?
about that municipality
Which municipality?
which all the liberals love as the model of liberalism and wokeism? New
Which one?
Zealand.
So let's ignore New Zealand. They're completely irrelevant. They're militarily irrelevant. They're foreign policy irrelevant. They're irrelevant across the entire gamut of things, unless you're into cricket. So, and I don't know about cricket how relevant they are. But let's come back to the things that matter. Australia has now become clear. But you look at all the other countries: Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. The Chinese, either through coercion or through co-option, have been getting them to blow hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. Right? Remember, Thailand and was it Laos or Thailand and Cambodia almost had a bit of a border war for a while as well. So, which was unprecedented in ASEAN. So there's all that tension out there.
Over a Hindu temple complex, right? That area
Yes,
which has
over a
a
Hindu
very
temple
ancient.
complex. So it's been a very complex situation in ASEAN. The problem is that when you have countries like, say, India, that keep talking crap like non-alignment, uh, and it's not bad to talk non-alignment. You can be like China and say we respect the NPT, and then go about violating it ridiculously and providing nuclear weapons to Iran, Libya, Pakistan, and everybody under the sun, North Korea. You can be like that. You can say non-alignment. It's fine to be strategically ambiguous. It is fine to lie. The problem with India is we're not strategically ambiguous, we're strategically schizophrenic. We ourselves don't know. We are bipolar when it comes to where our interests lie. And we try to pass it off as this very profound strategic ambiguity, which it is not. There is genuine strategic confusion here, right?
Enlightened self-interest.
Enlightened, I don't think bipolarity has ever been described as enlightened. Maybe a self descriptor. I mean, why not? I mean, if you can have men self identify as women, you can have a bipolar country self describe itself as enlightened. There is a theory, of course, that previous so-called enlightened saints and things like that had personality disorders and things like that. So it's a kind of continuation of a long series of mental illnesses. But anyway, that aside, India is confused. With Taiwan, they feel we are compromised. There are other issues in including Taiwan. You could have easily included it in an informal capacity. You don't. Australia was wishy-washy. You've brought it back without any concrete guarantees. Japan is solid. Singapore is solid. Vietnam is solid. These are the only three that work. But in their view, India is not solid. Just the same way we view Australia, they view India. Right?
Agreed. So basically, yeah. So, do you think anything good will come out of the Quad? Let's say is compromised. Is we are not really talking the right issues. America is not trustworthy. Australia, we can't trust Australia. But can any good come out of this meeting?
It'll be very good for think tanks who get contracts from them to write interminable papers on how it's important. It'll be very good for columnists who make 40, $50,000 rupees per column, writing on how this is the future or how this is not the future. But in practical terms, for the four countries involved, I don't see anything. It's very good for individuals who make money off it, or think tanks that make money out of trumpeting it. But that's about it.
So, okay, Abhijit. So we will see. The meeting is tomorrow. So we will discuss again next week when we have more information available to us. And let's see where did it go. And I hope you're wrong.
Believe me, I sincerely hope I am wrong.
Yes.
Okay. Just like the LCA Tejas, where I hope I'm terribly, terribly wrong, I will be the happiest if I have egg on my face, both in case of Tejas and in the case of the Quad. So here's to hoping I am wrong. Vail,
Okay,
vail,
so
vetri, vail.
thank you, audience, for listening to us. Please subscribe to the channel and also do check out the membership program. And thank you, Abhijit, for talking to us again. It's always a delight to have you on the show.
Vail, vail, vetri, vail.